Welcome to the Clifton Worley Show. This week we have the WorleyBirds, Nick and Josh with me. This week makes the 1 year that Clifton Worley Show, we've been putting it out. Wanted to spend a little time today just kind of thanking everybody and kind of giving some backstory for some of the new listeners that listen now that maybe weren't with us in the beginning. And then we've just got a lot of topics that some new things going on in our lives. We haven't had the time to dedicate to talk about it. And so I wanted to spend some time doing that. So I'm going to let you go first, Josh. What's new, man?
I went to the 10th annual, I guess, indoor folk festival in Traverse City. And there's this place called the TC Commons. And I was talking to Traverse City Commons. I was talking to Nick about it. It's in the old state mental hospital, which you think that's kind of funny. But it's got this grand old facade. It's kind of like almost a Victorian, would you say, styling on the outside of it.
Yeah. And
then the basement has all these shops, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And we were just walking around, and I didn't pay attention. I was just going to see who was in various different bands in various different places. There was about 10 different places where there were just different bands playing. And we would sit there, we'd listen to a couple songs. We could put a couple dollars in and go to the next place and listen to a couple songs. Walk right by the open mic night at the coffee shop where somebody was playing C to an F and singing about how he liked to sing and make people happy, and his singing was not making people happy. It was not. People were walking out and leaving. But anyway, we moved on. We moved on to the upper level, and there was a Song of the Lakes playing, which is a very popular kind of Irish, Scottish, or I don't even know what you call it, like a Celtic folk group, but they kind of focus on like sea shanties and stuff like that. And so we watched that for about a half an hour or so. It was really good, and went back downstairs and looked at some other stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to walk through here one more time, and then I want to go to the hat shop before it closes. And so we go up to the top there, and who do I see but my teacher, the teacher that taught me how to play guitar, Ray Smith. And he must be pushing 70-something now. And he was always just a super chill, really relaxed guy who could play anything you put in front of him almost instantly. And so we got to talking. We spent about 15 minutes talking because the lady singing show tunes went 15 minutes over her scheduled time to get on. And so he was on next with his band. And we talked and we caught up, and he told me this really interesting story about the first lesson I came in, and I kind of forgot this, and then as soon as he said it, it kind of sparked my memory. He says, first lesson I always ask my students, well, what do you want to do? Why do you want to play? Do you want to be a rock star? Do you want to be a musician? Do you want to? Do you just do it for fun? Did somebody in your family play? And he says that I gave him a look. I pulled out a cassette and I slapped BB King cassette down. I said, I want to play just like this guy. I mean, this is from Mr. Cellophane himself, and he was right. That was absolutely true. I was listening to BB King, and it's like, holy cow, this guy can say a whole lot with just a few little notes. Mm-hmm. Really simple. And his playing was it was exactly what needed to be to support his voice, and there was no chords or anything. And I wanted that too, but yeah. And so he had a good laugh, and he even pulled over some of his other the musicians in his band, and we talked for a bit, and I introduced him to my son and my wife, and then I recorded a little video of him, and I mean, that was kind of the least showy, least impressive thing he did the whole night, but it was just a part where I felt like, well, I can record, because I didn't feel like they really wanted much recording happening there. But it was something else to meet Ray again after almost 15 years of not seeing him. And it just brought back all these memories, and we had a long conversation about students and about teaching today versus the past. And man, yeah. It was really really something for me.
That's awesome. That I like when we can kind of come full circle. Sometimes what I call full circle moments, where mm-hmm. you just like you said, here's this guy who taught you, and now you're teaching others, and
yeah.
you're kind of at the point where he was when he was teaching you, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and still watching him, just the way that he would play, yeah. He was so smooth I mean, every time. And he would take that. There was about 150 people in there, and they were really, a lot of people left because that lady was the lady that was in there and taking over all that extra time, she was terrible. And so she killed that room.
Yeah.
And from the first song of Ray's band, everybody was like clapping and cheering, and they were up on their feet. And every time he played a solo, you could hear a pin drop.
That's amazing.
He just sat there with his old Martin 15 OM 15 or something like that, and he'd just rip into this solo, and his face and his hands, he would look like he was doing nothing, but he was going up and down the neck, back and forth. He would do, and then he would shift into chords and shift into playing the melody and shift into playing improvisational stuff, and people would just be into that solo, and there wouldn't be a noise. It was just incredible to watch him just hold court there. And so yeah, for sure, I learned a lot from watching him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Nick? What's new with you?
I got a lot going on, man. A lot. The first thing is when we were talking about our gear goals for this year, I made good on my goal, or my gear goal for 2018 really quick, and I bought a power supply. I got a K-Line CP05, and I got to give a shout out to Co Schneider from One Day at Guitar Events and from the Flip and Flipper show. He recommended that to me. I said, I'm looking for a power supply, and I'm on a budget, and I was looking at like a Donner or a Joyo, and he said, no, you got to get this K-Line. He's like, that's what I use. I use 2 of them, and I really like them. So I went and I got the K-Line, and it was used. I think it cost me maybe $30 shipped. And it's isolated, and it's got a couple 18 volts if you want to go that route. Super quiet. The biggest thing I noticed is it quieted my entire rig down. Everything is super quiet now. Just getting rid of that daisy chain did that, because I was using a one spot before. So yeah, I had to put it on I got my bigger board now. I've got that all mounted. I got a couple more spaces for pedals. I really want the new Lollygagger pedal, the Cherry Box that Sean is working on. And I'm going to test that one out soon when he's done. He's working on the enclosures right now, which look really cool. They're still going to be the wood, but they're added like an angle. They look really awesome. And I want to own one of Sean's pedals just because he's a Traverse City guy and, a Northern Michigan guy. And it'd be really cool to have a pedal from Michigan on your board. And that one just looks rad, like the stuff you can do with it. So that's probably what's going to go on there. And they're not small pedals, so that'll probably eat the spot pretty good.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the things that's new for me. And Clifton, the other thing that's new for me is that I just tried those Manel strings, those Martin Retros. And I know you had a string experience too, and you got some Gabriel Tenario strings.
Yes.
So I thought we could both, have a little bit of time and take a little bit of time and talk about those string changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'd gotten some String Joy from my wife for Christmas, and I was excited about them. I put them on; they sounded great. They seemed to be like a little bit like the tension on them was a little less, and it was very comfortable to play. And I had them on for about 6 weeks, and it's kind of getting to the point where I need to change them. And then for Valentine's Day, my wife had ordered me some Gabriel Tenorio strings, and I really was curious about them because I'd met Gabriel out in L.A. when I went to NAMM to the taco party, and I just always since I've been listening to the Slum and 60 Cycle Hum, like I wanted to try some, but I just had not pulled the trigger. And so she did that as a gift, and I put them on. He messaged me when he saw I made a post about it. It was like, hey, I just want to make you aware, the core wire goes around the post. Don't let that frighten you, because they're not wound all the way up to where the string enters the the tuning post.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
But he's got it specifically on his site. Like I went on his site after you told me that, and like I wanted some for my resonator, and you have to select the tailpiece length for resonators.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got that all figured out, which I thought was really, really cool. So yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that's an advantage? I mean, because you're not dealing with the coil going around the post, which is has the possibility to unwind and break, right? So
yeah,
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it actually, I would be willing to say, I suspect, I don't know for a scientific fact, that it would make it where there's less slipping on the post because it's just the core wire. It's not the wound around wire that's on it. So that adds a factor of, every time you turn the tuner, that's going to slip back into place, but you just got the core wire. So it's really just one point. So I think that helps give a little stability to the tuning. I found that the brass, they had a very, it was kind of an old school sound. They were bright, but then also it kind of let the guitar speak for itself. The string joy kind of had some accentuation, like where it accentuated some highs and some lows for you, and
yeah,
both great sounding strings. I think this is the thing. When you try these different strings out, I don't think it's like this is better than that. It's finding what sounds best for what I'm trying to accomplish.
Totally, it's crayons in the box, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's just a different color, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's funny you mentioned that about the string joys, because that's what I was gonna say. Like I went from string joy. Like you guys know, I'm a diehard string joy guy.
Right.
Just because I can get my particular tension gauges for slide. And so we kind of did the same thing where like the Martin Retros, they're meant to be like a very transparent string too. They're made out of Manel steel or Manel nickel, and they're supposed to be very corrosion resistant, very tough. And they're supposed to give you the old timey sound that it lets the wood in your guitar sound like the wood in your guitar. Like Josh says, your guitar sounds like your guitar. And so would I put them on like a laminate cheap acoustic? No, I wouldn't. But that's kind of the goal. And the string joys, I did notice. I'm going to post a couple videos on the Worley page, probably in the next day or two. I did a before and after, and like you said, Clifton, the string joys, it seemed like they had like a different EQ curve to them than these do. Like, yeah. I feel like you get a nice full response out of these Martin Retros, and it's bringing something out of the guitar I haven't noticed before, because I think it was masked. Like the string joys have, you can tell, like I'm getting the spike in the highs, and I'm getting the spike in the bass strings, like a bass string. So I'm getting like, it's like more... I don't want to say cutting, because the Martins cut too, but the Martins cut in a different way. Like the whole guitar feels more like it's got more character. Like you're getting the guitar's character with exactly. The string joys. I feel like I'm getting the strings character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I like those retros so much. If you, I've always noticed whenever I put on a fresh set onto my OM, the whole guitar lights up. It kind of just it's like I know I can feel it in my stomach a little bit more when that back hits, when I strum hard. The whole thing gets louder by a couple decibels, I'd say. And when I put on a new set versus an old set, and the best part about them compared to other ones is that there's a really unique feel. They feel, I mean, they're not as light as electric strings, but the nickel wound feels like an electric string. It's got that kind of silkier, slinkier feel.
Yeah.
Than a phosphor bronze or a. That's what I noticed is a big difference too. Not just the way it sounds, but it feels different.
Yeah, I noticed that, and Clifton, I know that you mentioned that too, and a lot of people that are playing the Gabriel strings say that they got a different feel to them, like they're it's more giving, I guess, or something like a spongy feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got it's just he does away with the way he winds these, and I'm trying to sum up what I've heard him say and what I've heard others say, but like he tries to make where, okay, this is the gauge of the string, but it's going to feel like a lighter gauge with the tension that's on it, and so he's trying to make it where, you know, you can get the benefit out of a bigger, like especially on acoustic, like a 12 gauge string, but not have the tension, the high tension that might cause. So it might be like, you know, the sound of a medium, but the tension of a light, or the sound of a light, but the tension of an extra light, if that makes sense. And I mean, I may be representing like that in a different light than he wants to be represented. That's the best way I can explain it.
He's listening and going, he's just shaking his head. No. No.
But I would welcome, you know, if he has any input on that to chime in and you know, clear that up. But one of the things that I'm waiting to see is I want to kind of take here 6 weeks from now, well, probably 5 weeks now, and go and kind of record with my phone at the same spot with my same guitar, and just see what that sounds like compared to what it sounded like, you know, when I put them on. And I'm what I suspect is it might be like Josh said, where the, you know, it's just a little bit quieter. But I want to compare that to where the string joys were at 6 weeks. And
yeah,
it'd be just a good baseline comparison.
Yeah, I'm with you too on that. Like, I had my string joys have been on. I think I had a set of the nickel. I think it was an 11 to 52 gauge on mine, and it had been on there over a month. But I haven't played that guitar a lot. Mm-hmm. So obviously, when you put a new set of strings on your acoustic, you know, it's going to be like getting new shoes and just wanting to run around, you know, because they feel so comfortable or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like what I equate to getting new guitar strings. It's like everything sounds great and fresh and new. So once that wears off a little bit, you know, I definitely want to look at it again. But the point of these is the Martins anyway, are like they're supposed to sound kind of like subdued, like imbalanced. So Josh was saying that they get quieter. Mm-hmm. Rather than just sounding terrible, which, you know, you get a set of phosphor bronze and like you play them really hard for 2 weeks, and then after that it's like they sound terrible.
Yeah, like, they never really sound bad. Yeah. And you know, honestly, if Martin actually had these in stock on their guitars instead of the crap that they use in Guitar Center, their guitars would sell way better because the problem is that they put the SPs on there, and the SPs are the worst guitar. I mean, they sound okay great when they're brand new, but they feel terrible if you don't clean them every single time you play them. Yeah, and that's the problem with the SPs.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. They sound dead, and it's funny that they weren't. The comment I posted that was posted, I don't know, was it Spencer or Scott that said when I posted that I got the retros on the group, they said, oh, do they die in like 2 days like the SPs? And I was like, oh yeah, that's a terrible string. I do have a funny story though, quick, about those strings. So I went into my local guitar shop. I already had some coming from Sweetwater. I had a pack, and I should have just got a couple. But I wanted to see if RIT carried them. So I went into RIT, and I was like, and I knew that Rainbow didn't carry them, and Guitar Center probably has them. I didn't really want to go there. So I just wanted to see if they had a set in there because I was getting impatient. And if I did like them, I wanted a source. So I was talking to the guy that owns the shop, and I'm like, do you carry any Martin Retros? And he's like, you know, we did when they first came out. I guess all the forums were ranting and raving about them. All the Martin guys really, really wanted them. And I ordered some. And then some guy came in here, and I had a bunch of acoustic players in here one day, and this guy was ranting and raving out of nowhere about these Tony Rice Martin Retro strings, and he got all the Martins sold on them, all the Martin guys, and they all bought a set. And when the guy was leaving, I said, "What do you work for, Martin or something? What do you?" Because he didn't buy anything. And he goes, yeah, actually, I do work for Martin. And he walked out.
Oh my gosh.
So they had some kind of weird, shady grassroots campaign going where this guy was like going from shop to shop, like creating buzz for these strings.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, every single player that bought these retros hated them.
Yeah.
Like
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The Tony Rice set is not the set you want, unless you're a bluegrasser.
No,
because it's a different weight.
Oh, is it? I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
just
buy the
meant
actual Tony Rice set.
I just meant the Martin retros.
Yeah.
Not that's if that's different than the Tony Rice set, that's my mistake. But
Yeah.
no, the retros he was talking about. So he said they all hated them, and I never carried them again. I can get them on special order if you want them, and I was like, no, I can just order them. But I think that they're totally legit, and I love the feel of them. They feel way different. I mean, obviously, I don't get that tension, and I ordered the wrong gauge too. Like I ordered the custom light, and that was like 11 to 54, and I was because I'm tuning to Open E, so I was like, all right, I'm going to do that, and I don't have like my resonators meets at the 12th fret, so I mean it's not like a long, So I was like, all right, this makes sense. But now I realized that I had to actually keep my my high E because it wasn't bulky enough. So I'm going to go ahead and place an order for the 12 to 54. So
before you do that, go to Elderly and get multiple sets. You get a price break, Elderly.
But then I got to drive to Elderly, and then
no. Go to the website. They'll ship them right to you, and it's way cheaper. I buy mine. I buy a year of them at a time. At Elderly.
Really?
Yeah, and I just get 12 sets of them, and then I buy them, and you get a break for like 3 or more. You get a break for 6 or more, and the price goes down to be well below what even Musician's Friend charges.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I've been going. I mean, Sweetwater has free shipping, so they're like $8.99 in free shipping.
Yeah.
So I got them from. I just wanted to order a set, but I felt kind of weird ordering a set because then the rep calls me and like I get like 2 emails and then I'm like I mean I get the candy and everything and that's cool, but I do like them though, man. I want to see how they age. I really like the feel of them. Like Clifton said, they have a different feel. I think they feel a little spongier, but I'm getting more of the guitar that I didn't before. And I do want to, there's 2 things I want to specify. One, Clifton and I both went from Stringjoy to another string company. That is not because Stringjoy is a bad string company.
Right.
Stringjoy on electric, I love Stringjoy. Like Stringjoy is absolutely, I mean, I have like 5 sets downstairs right now and I string all my guitars with Stringjoy. But they do have a different characteristic. They do add something to your guitar. I think they're a brighter string.
Yeah.
They're nickel electrics. And if you get the brass is super zingy. Like it's a super bright string, and they definitely change the sound of your guitar. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is if you're even going to consider these retros, you have to have a nice guitar, I think. Like
absolutely.
Like Josh, you're playing a Martin, right?
Yeah, Martin OM1. It's all solids and made in America. Makes
exactly.
a big difference.
And my gold tone, my beard is the back and body or the back and front are solid mahogany, and it's got. I mean, with a resonator, it doesn't matter as much because you got the cones making all the noise, and then it's laminate mahogany on the side. So it really brought the warmness of the mahogany out of my guitar. I wouldn't, if you had a crap ply guitar, I would not put, like, if I got let's say I got a Gretsch Jim Dandy or something like that, where it's meant to be like kind of a cheapy sounding guitar, like, I don't think I would put these on there. No. I would put something with a bigger spike on the highs or something like that. Something that, was a little more trebly. But anyway, I figured what, I would say, like, I don't know if Clifton, I don't know if you would give the same advice with the Gabriel Tenarios. Like, I don't know if you'd have like, like a cheap, like Rogue acoustic and throw a set of GTs on there.
I would never throw that kind of investment on a cheap guitar. It's just, with his strings, they're like $21 to $25 a set, which I totally get that, he's hand winding, but I wouldn't waste that on a cheap guitar.
Yeah, and I also don't think I don't think he's I don't think he's expensive either, because if you look at a pair of Elixirs, I mean, I was just thinking of a set of Elixirs. Elixirs are like, what, $14 now?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Would be curious to see how your strings age, though, Clifton. That's because everybody talks about them being, like, the Gabriel strings being, like, aging very well.
That's just really the last thing to see, how they take wear and tear versus machine wound strings,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So more on that to come.
Yeah. So Clifton, talk about this Fender Duosonic you bought to flip and aren't going to.
Okay. Okay. So I was at home last Friday night and didn't have any plans, and we were just hanging out at the house, and all of a sudden I roll across this thing on Facebook Marketplace, and it was this Duosonic, and it didn't have a price, and so it caught my attention. It looked cool. And so I messaged the guy, and I was like, "What do you want for it?" And he's like, $150. I was like, "Would you consider 100?" I'm trying to justify me buying another guitar by, I got this crazy deal or whatever. And he was like, "What about 125?" And I'm kind of like, well, I don't know, So, anyways, I posted it on Flippin' Flippers, which is a great podcast you need to go listen to. Two good friends of the show, Co Schneider and Paul Pennington. And Paul's like the guru on what everything's worth. He's anytime I'm thinking about buying something now, like I usually run it by Paul to see what he thinks, price wise. And so, anyways, he was like, "Yeah, you should do good." Especially if you go straight to reverb with it. I'm like, okay. So, people started commenting on it. If you buy this, I'll buy it from you. That kind of deal. And so I went and I told the guy I'd meet him that evening, and I drove about 40 miles north and got the guitar. And anyways, when I looked at it, it was in kind of rough condition. There was some big surface cracks on the finish, several on the top, a couple on the back. There was a couple off the neck pocket. The pick guard's in really tough shape. They like cut out a spot where you could get in with a tool to do a truss rod adjustment. The input jack, like around it, because it's mounted on the pick guard, was kind of sunk in. There's a lot of wear and tear on the fretboard, and kind of fretboard stained, like from heavy playing. And but it looked to be all original. And anyways, I kind of felt like, well, this is a good price, to just kind of see if there's any magic in this guitar. And so I got it anyways and brought it home, and it kind of sat there through the weekend. Anyways, Monday I decided to plug it up into an amp, and I'm like, holy cow, like this sounds amazing. Blew me away. I just could not believe that it sounded so good.
Yeah, you sound great on that guitar. Like, yeah, I don't. What were you playing through? You Blues Junior, right? The first time?
I was playing through Blues Junior. And then I came back and did a live stream where I was taking the JHS Twin 12 and playing to the Blues Junior.
Yeah, I loved that. And by the way, that pedal is just phenomenal.
It is. It is.
I mean,
very
it's
happy
everything I want a drive pedal to do is in that pedal. Like, I'm gonna have to look into that at some point because it just looks fantastic. But man, and that thing, like, that's kind of just, I mean, when you played that, I was like, all right, Clifton found a good guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could find another Duosonic that didn't sound that great.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, in Ryan, and so in this case, looks were deceiving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a well-worn older guitar. But Ryan, the one Ryan's had forever, his old Duosonic, that one's great too.
Yeah. That's what Kyle Smith was and said something about it in 60 Cycle Home. He was like, "Hey, these were amazing," and he's telling me I should probably refinish the guitar. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. Like, I may put new tuners on it if I deem fit, but
yeah,
it is what it is, and I'm not gonna
Yeah,
try to change
I think you just I think you just let that one keep wearing and it should be fine. Like the only thing on that guitar that's a bummer is that the dude did that truss rod thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not terrible. Like, I think you could go in there and honestly, if you took like a little Dremel bit and went in there and kind of like rounded that out and made it look more intentional rather than carved out with an X-Acto blade, like it would look a lot better.
Well, and if I could find if I could find a pick guard just to pop that one off and put another one on, you know, I'd be happy with that.
I wonder if I know on Reverb, like they got every pick guard under the sun. There's a bunch of people making pick guards, so you might be able to find one on there. I thought Guitar Fetish might have them, but I think I saw that they had the ones for the Squier 51s at one point because there was a demand for them. Everybody was modding that guitar, so they might still. I don't know, but I'll be honest with you, like after your review, or not review, but you playing that one and Ryan playing that Mustang, I kind of wanted one of those Seafoam Mustangs, like. They have one at Rainbow right now, the Seafoam one. It's $120.
Yeah.
Like, I picked it up and I was like, this guitar needs a setup, but they'll do it for me if I buy it. And I'm like, this guitar is great. Like, you know, I'm like, this would be a good standard tuning guitar for me, just because I don't really have one. So, you know, they're definitely well made. I mean, talk about a company that's doing it right. I mean, they totally are.
Yeah.
Like. And they even improved, but I think you've got a winner there, man.
Yeah, I'm very pleased, and I mean that's kind of like just a paycheck guitar, you know. That's not like anything that I had to save up for or anticipate. So.
Nope, I think that's good. And by the way, you seem to be like you're definitely like a single coil dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. and
like
that's funny because
really
like I've just been gassing for a humbucker style guitar for over a year now.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, because as soon as you get into that chicken picking, I'm just like, man, I'm like, he just kills that chicken picking. Why does he want a humbucker? But yeah, well, we're kind of dominating the conversation here. Josh, you got anything else to talk about?
Well, let's see. As far as what I've got to talk about, not really, you know, guys. I mean, I was listening to what you guys had to talk about, and I will add that Squier Bullet Mustang is a killer guitar. They're kind of mucky in the pickups. I mean, for a humbucker, I think you'd have to replace them if you wanted to get anything close to what Clifton's got. But as far as everything else, they feel pretty good. They sound pretty good. My student has one of those. I would like to talk about something else my student got. The Twiggy Blues from Sonic Cake. He got a pedal on my recommendation. Holy cow, that's a nice pedal for $70.
Hey, Josh, explain that. That's the multi-effect one, right? With the 3 pedals in one.
It's 3 pedals in one. It's a really interesting, almost ambient sounding reverb. It's not really a bluesy sounding reverb. It's not a room sound. It's almost like a plate. It's like a really nice, gentle plate sound. It's got a cabinet sim switch, and it's got a really nice analog voice delay that you can oscillate. It's got a really decent tube screamer sounding overdrive, and a compressor on it, which is really unusual. So it's got all these effects in one thing for $70, and it's dead quiet. I suggested it to him because I didn't want him bringing his champ in every week. I didn't want him bringing a champ in every week for youth group to play 3 songs, and I also wanted a solution for him when he comes up on Sundays to play with us. And I thought, well, this can't be bad. I looked at some reviews. Hey, it sounds pretty good, and that's actually a pretty versatile sounding thing. And he gets it in, and I played a little bit with his guitar, and my goodness, it's a nice sounding pedal. It's everything you need for $70 to get started. And it's nice and quiet, and you don't have to worry about patch cables. It comes with a power supply. So, I mean, it's just a crazy deal for somebody who's like, I don't know what pedal to get. Actually, I think that your cousin, Tim Worley, right? That's Tim, right? I think your cousin would flip for this pedal for $70. It has everything that you'd want. Yeah. I could actually see you, Clifton. I could see you taking that pedal and not needing anything else. Of course, you would want to play other things, but it's incredible what they can do. If with this, if that was around when I was a kid, man, that would be so much easier. You know, and it's the size. It's tiny. It's maybe I think you could probably fit it into a sock. It's so small. It's and with all those effects on.
Can you put it in your mouth?
Well, I'd imagine.
That's a shout out to Co. Co says that. Co says a mini is not truly a mini unless you can put it in your mouth.
Hey, well, talking about Co, we're fixing to go somewhere about Co, but go ahead.
Go ahead. That's good.
I was gonna say, talking about Co, I wanted to give everybody a heads up. I'm gonna be going out to Co's next one day event, and super stoked about that. May 18th in Tracy, California, and it's some kind of deal with Jonathan Fellows. He builds guitars. Maybe some of y'all seen that. Like we talked about it after NAMM. He had this orange guitar that was like really legit that he brought out at the Tone Mob pizza party, and everybody was just oogling over it.
That's that orange one with the bird's eye maple pickguard, right?
Yes, most beautiful, and the neck on that has the bird's eye maple as well. It's just the most beautiful piece of wood I think I've ever seen on a guitar. And anyways, Jonathan Fellows lives over in Tracy, which is like about an hour drive across the bay from San Francisco, close to Modesto, Stockton, somewhere around there. And anyways, he is heading up an event that his city is doing, like this gallery for North California Lutherist. I hope I'm saying that right, Lutherist. And Co's going to be out there with the one-day show that day. And so I'm going to be traveling out there. I think maybe the Tone Jerks guys are possibly coming. And then I might hit up some friends along the way out there, just kind of seeing what I can fit in my schedule, and looking forward to that. But if you live out that way in the Bay Area or Northern California, Mid California, whatever, try to come on out. It's on May 18th, and let's talk a possibility, maybe setting up a separate event on the 19th. So we'll see what materializes. But so yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, just want to give a plug for that. So if you're out there, come by, and I'll be out there, and maybe we'll live stream together or something.
Clifton, you should walk in, grab the equits, and run.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
I would pay good money to watch Co chasing you down the street.
That'd be better than reality TV, wouldn't it?
Oh,
I think they know where they can find you, though.
That's the bad part. They know where to find me.
You're not exactly living off the grid.
No.
No, but that's awesome, man. I wish we could get out and do stuff like that. I've been saying I want. We've been talking about maybe a trip to Chicago Music Exchange, the three of us, and I definitely do want to. I do want to do that. I'd like to go back there, and I've been trying to. I got to get in touch with. I've had the urge lately to play some higher end acoustics, and I want Josh to meet me down here and drive us to. I'll drive us to Lansing, Elderly, and check some guitars out.
Yeah, we'll have to. I was thinking about that the other day. Maybe in the summertime, sometime we can do it when school's out, and I can just take Ryan with me. He'll have fun, and we can do that for sure. Yeah.
They got. I mean, because that's like the best place to go check out high end gear. Like especially Chicago Music Exchange has walls of electric guitars. But their one room acoustic room it's not that big. Whereas an Elderly's got. I mean, they specialize in folk instruments.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of acoustics and mandolins and stuff like that, and that's kind of the place where you want to go. And I try some Martins. I honestly got this thing with the Martin 00015, the mahogany one. If I was gonna get a Martin, I think I'd have to get that one. But the Road series is interesting too. And I'm talking about if I was gonna spring on a guitar, in the next couple of years, if I was gonna spend $800,000 to a guitar and, dip into whatever and do it, to have a really nice playing instrument that was easy for once. That's probably what I would go with. It would probably be a Martin. I thought about messing with the Gibson LG O's and some of those vintage ones, but there's probably a reason why they don't command that much money. I mean, if you're going to get something that's really going to play with little work. On the other hand, I might just run into a really nice guitar I could just have to have. So, I'm not really limiting myself or anything. But I did have one more thing I wanted to talk about, guys, on the What's New. We had Nick Bongers from Great Lakes Guitar Pickups on and a couple episodes ago, and I talked about having a humbucker made with him. Well, I did, and he got it to me in like a week because he was really excited to build it, and he was sending me pics along the way that he was building it for me. And he did something really good. Now, Nick doesn't name his pickup models. He thinks that's lame. He just makes you what you want. Mm-hmm. And I asked him I'm like, I want a bridge humbucker. I said, I want a really bright tone. I want it really dynamic. And I told him what I was going to use it for. And I wanted it to be an Alnico 2 or 3. I can't remember what I got. But anyway, he did all of that. And he said, I'm going to do something special to this too, and if you don't like it, send it back. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. So I got it in, and he did two, and I love it. It's in my Samick already, and he did two things to it. So this thing's measuring at around 7.98, so it's a low output humbucker. And it's got what he did was he overwound, so he says if you have a covered humbucker, you should wind both slug and the pole pretty balanced. But anyway, so he overwound the slug pole, which I never knew anything about. And he also, I think it was that, and if it's not Nick, forgive me, it's one of the two. But the other thing he did is he didn't pot the pickup. Normally you would think, all right, that's not good, But he said, no, I think I can build this extra tight, and you're not going to have to worry about potting it, and I think you're going to like it. So he sent it to me, and especially the way I play. And man, I'm telling you what, this is different. This is different than any other pickup I've ever had. This thing is the most dynamic thing. You can hear every little thing. In fact, I've had to learn, I'm learning how to play differently with this pickup because you hear everything. You hear every streak of the strings. You hear this thing picks it up. Mm-hmm. It makes my slide guitar playing sound so much more alive on an electric than I get some of that acoustic stuff in there, where if I really dig, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear the windings. This pickup is fantastic. I cannot say enough about Nick, and I'm going to have a neck pickup made. Although I might buck what he told me, and I might actually have him make me a wide range humbucker, like the Fender wide range humbucker, like you have, Clifton.
Yes.
I might put that in the neck. He's like, I think that would look weird, and I'm like, I don't care.
It look weird. I think it looked cool.
On a guitar like that, where it's not like you're butchering up like a $3,000 Gibson Les Paul or anything. I mean, I would do it.
No, it's just a nice plain Samick guitar.
Yeah.
It's my guitar. I mean, it's cheap, but it plays really nice, and that's really all that matters. And I got a new soldering iron too, so this time I won't absolutely butcher the whole damn thing like I did last time. Which, by the way, folks, get a soldering iron, get a good soldering iron, like a 40-watt adjustable or something. Don't mess around with something. I was pressing so hard with my soldering iron because it wasn't hot enough that I actually broke the tip off.
Yeah.
This one was instantaneously better in all ways. It made soldering so much easier. Don't mess around with cheap equipment. If you're going to do the work yourself, get good tools. That's just coming from a modder that has made every mistake possible. I'm just letting you know. Don't mess around.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to give Nick a shout out because, man, I'm telling you, if you want a pickup made, you got to go to Nick. Nick, just the back and forth, you might get that with a guitar maker. You don't get that with many pickup makers, and he really loves what he does, and he's totally reasonable. So, anyway.
Yeah.
My shout out.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to the Mojo Minute, I wanted to mention one thing, and that's that we mentioned at the beginning of the show, but just wanted to thank everybody for being listening to us for a year. First started out just be me by myself doing one-on-one interviews, and I met Nick and Josh along the way. I had them on the show and kind of developed into the WorleyBirds, and here we are a year later. And so I just want to thank everybody for joining in. It kind of started out as if you're in the gear slum, it kind of started out, the whole thing started out me popping in that group. and live streaming kind of anonymously. And they're like, "Who is this dude? Who's this weirdo?" And it was kind of a troll. And back then, I was kind of into trolling the guitar groups a little bit. And I thought I was being funny, and I don't know, I kind of just made some waves there and got this way bigger reputation than I can feel, of being a crazy dude. And so kind of went from that, and then Vanen over in South Africa, he had me on his show, and that kind of gave me the courage to, hey, I really enjoyed doing that, stepping out and recording. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking the other day, about a year ago, where I was in life. And, my wife was expecting a baby any day now. And I launch a podcast. And then the next day, the baby's born. So it was just, this whole thing was born in this crazy, vacuum of just a lot of stuff going on in life. And it has just been, it's been a wild ride. And I've really enjoyed it. And I just want to thank the listeners who've been on this journey with me, and I couldn't do it without you guys. And so it's a shout out to all the WorleyBirds out there, and the resident WorleyBirds, Josh and Nick, for being on the show with me. And it's kind of fun not to do this by yourself, and so just appreciate you guys.
Well, and we appreciate you too, Clifton. I mean, Josh and I just being fans of the show, and you. And all of a sudden, we always thought it was cool that you were just interviewing like non-celebrity people and just having them on the show and just being real with them in an interview. And that's all Josh and I were. And then for you to have, brought us into your life and onto the show and given us a chance to express our opinions and do this and have fun thank you for that.
For sure. Yeah.
It's been a wild ride. We haven't been here that long, but I think the show has gotten so much better, and it gets better every week. And and it will continue to get better. And as we build our own community and our own listener base, we got nowhere to go but up. And
for sure.
That's mainly because you're such a cool guy.
Super chill.
Oh, well, this is just
chill.
so much fun to do, and I just love doing it. It's finding my tribe, and I feel like I really found my tribe. So it's a blast.
That's a good way to put it, man. But cool.
Well,
absolutely.
So you guys ready?
Yes, we're ready for the Mojo.
We're ready.
All right. Okay, we are ready for the Mojo Minute, and today I'm gonna talk a little bit about Eric Sardinez. And for you guys who don't know who Eric Sardinez is, he's a blues rocker that plays slide guitar, like me. And the reason why I'm talking about him is that I think he's probably, like I've mentioned before, that Jack White had a lot to do with my electric sound and kind of is the sound I hear in my head. But that's not entirely true, because when I first got into slide guitar, whenever you get into anything, you kind of gravitate towards the kind of the phenoms, the people who are really good at it. And Eric Sardinez is that guy. He's a guy who was kind of like a blues rocker, typical Hendrixy type guy who discovered the resonator and walked back, from Stevie Ray Vaughan and all that, walked back to the Delta blues guys, fell in love. He bought a resonator of his own and he started playing, Delta blues, and to the point where he's got a big old Respect Tradition tattooed on his back with a dobro with a snake wrapped around it and all that stuff. Like this guy looks the part. Like he sounds just like one of those guys. He seems like he's really modeled himself after Charlie Patton, but electrified. And Eric has a really unique approach to music. For one, he's left-handed, but he learned how to play right-handed, so his strong hand is actually his left hand. So he plays very, very percussive. He's got a real percussive approach, and he's really wild with that slide. And he's an absolute wild man. He's a showman. I got to see him actually probably 6 years ago with my dad. We both got to go, and my dad drove down here. We both went to the intersection, which is a super small venue, and Eric played there. I mean, it's a bar. And at one point, I mean, I was digging it. I was entranced. And one point he jumped out into the crowd, and he was running around the floor playing guitar. Like we all got in a circle around him, and he was just going nuts, plugged into this Marshall half stack and doing all this stuff and like nodding at us all. And like at one point he told me to like move out of the way because I was like standing in front of him clapping, and he was trying to get to the back of the bar. He's like, yeah, man, that's cool. Get out of the way. So, and then I get to meet him afterwards and got his autograph and shook hands with him and talked to him about, some of our influences and stuff, and like Bucka White and, all those guys, Honey Boy Edwards. But the cool thing about Eric, and where I'm kind of going with this with the Mojo Minute, is that I liked Eric so much. I bought that Beard resonator that I own, my baby. I bought that because of him, and I put a pickup in it because of him. And everything I did, I was going for Eric's sound, which was like a lipstick pickup in a resonator guitar amplified through like a tube amp. Like that was my thing. That is what started it all. And Eric's an absolute wild man. And what's funny about Eric is I always assumed that he played really expensive instruments. I know Washburn made him a guitar, but all I've ever seen him play are two guitars. He plays what I found out is a 70s dobro, and he made by Gibson, and it's a cheap one too. It's like laminate sides or something. And then he plays and that's the one, he sets it on fire all the time. He has two guitars. He's got his Washburn and he's got that one. That one he sets on fire all the time as part of the show. And like he pours lighter fluid on it like Jimi Hendrix and sets it on fire. Then he puts it out. So this guitar has been set on fire and put out, I don't know how many times now, but it's all rusted, crusted, eroded. Like this thing is absolutely like trashed. And he's still playing it, and he's playing, I think he calls them Mojo 1 and Mojo 2. And he plays the Washburn, which he worked with Washburn to have the guitar made for him, and that's his open E guitar. And that one is pretty similar to the other one, except it's got like a bunch of crazy stuff that he had Washburn put into it, and it's made it's got a lot of ebony in it, and it's got a Seymour Duncan mini humbucker and pickup. But one of the reasons why I bring this up is like I found an old interview with Eric the other day in his approach to things, and one of the questions was, which players were most inspirational as you began to shape your tone? And he said, my tone is just my own thing. I drilled pickups into my guitar, and that's my tone. I didn't derive it from anything except a screwdriver and putting electronics into my guitar, which was a dobro. I found an old lipstick tube pickup, and I just basically just cut a hole in the guitar where I thought the pickup would go and put it in there. And he's done that 25 different dobros. And further on, he says, which of your personal guitars were they modeled after? And he said, I created my own resonator. I've got about 25 of them. So it stemmed from what I like in the shape of the body, the tones, and the woods. I prefer ebonies and really basic ply bodies. So he's not even playing solid wood guitars mostly. He's playing plies. And that makes sense because they're not going to, like solid wood guitars, I don't know how they would hold up to that kind of abuse, and they would probably feedback like crazy with those resonators. And some of the old dobros were just harmony guitars that were kind of cut out, and a sound well was added, and they put in the cone because the cone makes more of a difference. He says, I have tons of guitars that are so beautiful, but looks are unnecessary for tone. The cheaper it is, the better it sounds. I'm all about the run of the litter when it comes to guitars. And I thought that was really cool. Like I had never read that interview. That was in Vintage Guitar Magazine. And I know sometimes he records with like in the studio with steel bodied guitars and trioleans and duolians. And he's got some really old vintage stuff. I've seen him play Trussarts before. One time his two guitars they were lost by the airline, and he never thought he'd get them back. And he was somebody gave him a Gretsch White Falcon, and he was playing that because he had nothing else that he could use. But I thought this would be a great addition to the Mojo Minute because it really shaped the way I am and my approach to guitars. And to see a guy as fantastic as Eric make those guitars sound like that,
Yeah.
And the whole vibe that he's got, and the whole, I know I was just talking about getting a Martin, but I think that's a different like vibe, right? Like, I want the Martin because
really.
I want one guitar that's pristine and needs no work. You know, like when I pick it up, I know this guitar's money in the bank. All my other guitars, you got to kind of fight. And he fights his guitars, and you can hear it. And I think it's kind of a different style altogether. Like, you know, he can get everywhere from intricate finger picking to just all out slash and burn style slide guitar. And he's a very busy player, and most of my licks came from watching his videos and just picking like stuff off those videos. And that's the way I want it to be. So I think, if anything, if the Mojo Minute, I don't think without Eric Sardinez, the Mojo Minute would even exist, because he is, and I can't believe I haven't talked about him before. And I know we didn't do music picks this week, but please go out and check out Eric Sardinez. He now plays with a band called Big Motor, but I think his best album is called Black Pearls. Every song on it is good. I really like Wicked Ways. That's one of my favorite songs. But you'll see kind of Eric at his best on Black Pearls. And he does a lot of the songs sound the same, but if you like that, you know, dirty blues rock, that real primitive blues stuff, he goes everywhere from like blues rock staples back to the Delta, and it's all good, you know, whether he's turning it up or down. So anyway, that's the Mojo Minute. Like, sometimes to sound good and to sound like you, all you need is a cheap guitar and a pickup, and the point is just doing your own thing, just being who you are, rather than just trying to copy the person you like the most. And I think that's an important message. Like, you can make music, and you don't need, we all get caught up in gear so much, and sometimes you just don't need that. You know, you need to sound like, you need to be you.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more on that last statement. That's something that, you know, the interview I did last week with Brandon Bagby, he touched on that a little bit, and then it kind of came up in discussion in one of the forums. I think it was Gear Talk Praise and Worship, where he was talking about, guys, you need to stop trying to emulate the gear, but just spend time emulating the sounds, and stop worrying about all the stuff and find a way to recreate it your own way. And that's what he was encouraging people to do. And, you know, we touched on that a little bit. If you, matter of fact, if you haven't listened to that, go check that episode out as well. But I think where we find our way as a player is getting inspiration and going after it ourselves, you know, making it our own, not trying to copy what somebody else is doing. So good stuff. Thanks.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. And I mean, you know, so sometimes I think Josh is more Mojo than me, because Josh is the person that's always saying, well, you know, you're just going to sound like you. So
yeah, and that's one thing one thing that you got to remember is that, and that's something that people don't really know about Martins. They make you sound like you. That's the whole point. And so I think you'll be surprised if you play a couple of them, just how they make you sound like you and nothing else. And that's why a lot of people don't like them. To be honest with you, is because they put you out there, warts and all. And I mean, if that's what Mojo is, then heck, I believe in Mojo.
Yeah.
But you know, that's to me what guitars are for. You know, especially acoustic guitars. They put you out there, warts and all. If you don't want your warts to show, well, a lot of tailors will do that for you. They'll hide your warts really well. They really do.
So
I mean,
how come guitars? So how come? So are Martins? Can Martins be described as topical?
How do you mean?
Hiding your warts.
Oh, I see. Like they're like an exfoliant. They'll take off all that makeup. You know, they're like an astringent. They peel that stuff right off.
Ringing endorsement for Martin guitars here. You definitely need to tag them in this post.
Actually, I'm absolutely going to, because I want people to really try those retros, because you know what, that guitar you love, maybe what you love is elixirs. You know, maybe what, and you might as well go get an Ibanez still to play. It plays just as well and it's a lot cheaper. You know.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, I had elixirs were terrible. These are they didn't sound. I mean, I had nanos and polys. I've done all that, you know. But
Yeah.
I got it. You know, my Mojo Minute guitar, my beard, like it. I think those are a perfect fit for this guitar. I'm gonna order a heavier gauge next time and try that, and I want to see how these age. But I think all the guitars I have, this is the one that would benefit from those the most. So, yeah, that's definitely pretty. That's pretty cool. You know,
for sure. Well, it's been fun, guys.
It has been, and so again, I just want to thank everybody for hanging with us for a year and hanging out, and all the WorleyBirds, and many more to come, and just looking forward to the future and what it holds. And so thank you guys for joining on this week, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Cliff.
We'll see ya.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.